Thanks. I'm going to talk about the HOLOS-IE. Sometimes I call it HOLOS-IE rather than HOLOS because there is a confrontation with another one. So our main title is towards a system-based digital platform for agricultural land use planning, management decisions, and inventory reporting. Though this inventory reporting, ultimately our thoughts will be going other way. One is the carbon to environmental footprinting, as well as mentioned on MRV. So we'll have some approach or technology that we can incorporate in and go for the MRV approaches as well. So that will be our another target. And thanks obviously to Science Foundation Ireland for funding this project. As you can see, that is our land cover, different types of land cover, and the source of carbon from the agricultural sector is too high, and the overall the forest itself is unable to offset these emissions. So ultimately, we need to find several other options, and what are those? So that we need to find and find the ways, and that is our concept is the modeling. And modeling is not as such the process-based, rather the thought, a comprehensive system-based model rather than sometimes we call whole farm. So why we are going to take this model? One, to adopt optimization. That is, obviously, we need to solve the problems, and participatory and simulation-based approaches, aligning with the systems and the new goals to better cope with this changing world. So whatever the changes over time so that we can cope with. Configure farm resources within the system. That is a concept of circularity, and the farmers' management strategy for resource allocation over space and time to achieve performance goals. Exploit available knowledge and skills and expand existing technologies and management practices without in-depth modification of the organization of farming systems. Adjust the timing of farming operations to improve the outputs and inputs ratio of the farms. Simulate the interactions, considering their proximity to existing technologies. That is highly important, management practices and the organization of farming systems. Allow answering questions that would take a long time and a lot of work in real life. What are the aims? So our aim, in fact, there's so many and really difficult to handle with, but to understand the effects of changes in climate and management practices on farm production, profit, and environmental footprint. Investigate numerous alternatives in cost-effective way, the best alternatives for on-farm trials of case studies. Cognize how the different components of a farming system influence the outcomes. So that will be our important target. Provide guidelines to cope with the changing management strategies and targets around profitability, because this is highly important, particularly for the farmers, need profit, while keeping environmental gains, so that we cannot avoid either. Determine on what farm factors are likely to be the greatest contributors to the targeted goals or objectives. Guide our understanding of the implications of changing regulations, climate, and consumer demands today and in the future. Explore the options for the future farming to adapt their system rapidly and effectively as the climate alters. Identify effective strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions while sequestering carbon for offsetting, enabling sustainability. That is the carbon farming, a part of that. So at this moment, we are thinking to include some of the major key land uses or land cover that we can. One is the grassland system, arable cropping, agroforestry, horticulture and fruits, housing, manure, peatlands and wetlands, and energy. But at this moment, we are starting with the major key one because of our limitations, money and manpower both. So our objectives, that is the HOLOS one. So our target is assistance to and synthesis of Irish land uses and management interventions, algorithm, response functions, and emission factors across land uses within a farming system. Development of dynamic combined soil and meteorological map. So that will be an important part why we are going for the mapping, so that we can find the right place where really we are going to estimate the emissions, either greenhouse gas or whatever the case. Then we can go to that place, verify it, and also provide the ultimately come up with the reporting purposes and management options that we can take. Of course, because this is a digital platform, accordingly coding, recoding, decoding is so many tasks are associated with it. And we are going to really use this Canadian version of the HOLOS because there is some progress on this, and we thought it is better to adopt this for us. And it is for inclusion and replacement. We are going to, based on our Irish EU concept that we will bring forward in the end, management and develop our own algorithms. Then the development or improvement of the existing software platform. So over time, it will be always required. There will be no ending process, and user interface for diversified users. At this moment, we are developing the text-based one, and then we'll go forward for the web-based version. And not last anyway, assessment of the use and applicability of the modified HOLOS-IE for simulating sectoral production. So that is one as greenhouse gas, carbon, neutron footprint because of the water pollution and some other aspects, circular bioeconomy. So it is the circularity within and then bioeconomy part we want to incorporate, and ecosystem services. So it is the overall agro-biodiversity concept and ecosystem services together will bring it forward. And we are going to cover all land uses and their combinations for reporting and decision making. This is of course, we adopted some theory of change that we learned from the SFI training. So initially our thought is a bit different, then we improve the things and trying to update, and in future we'll update this diagram, what we are going to do, what are the things needed, and with the updating over time, what are the things so that we can incorporate. So all the approaches, programming and some other approaches that we will be taking into consideration, all footprinting within the agricultural systems, and we are going to take into account, and ultimately our target will be alternative farm configurations. That is how we are going to reduce our greenhouse gas footprint or environmental carbon footprint from this farming. So always there should be some options either through mitigations or use alternative land uses and so on. So this will be within the model system. Then the carbon footprinting and reporting, so that even the MRV within the system, farm profitability analysis. So based on the management options, so that we can calculate the cost benefit of adopting a certain management or even the land uses or mitigations options, what will be the benefit. And then we have included, because we thought rather than paying blindly to the farmers or whatever the case, we should have something, the result-based payment scheme. So what will be the results? We can give credit to that person. For example, we may ask a question, for example, minimum tillage. We are giving money to or paying to everyone. Who is adopting the people, whether this is working or not? We don't know, because there are so many variables driving variables that influences this, whether it will work or not, based on the soil type. That is another important factor. So that we want to bring within the model system, so that we can get the carbon footprint for the whether is reducing or not. Then target will be the climate change impact analysis for the adaptation in future, in terms of the land uses, whether any lab and any crops or any certain species that you can adopt, and ultimately due to dry or high rainfall, we can sustain our productivity. And ultimately, the target sustainable farming, climate change mitigation, adaptation, environmental pollution, that will be another important part so that we can protect our water bodies. And in the end, it will be the informed policy and decision making. Of course, it will be an important part of the research and education. It will be required because we need to develop. Now we'll come to our software. Preliminary, as I mentioned, don't expect too much on this. So this is a kind of the prototype, and already we have this and can use, but we are not opening at this moment because we are working on this, but we want to show our stakeholders of different category to get your feedbacks. So that already we mentioned. And as I mentioned, it is an agricultural system-based digital platform. So that is our main term that we are using. This will be the first, when you open, there will be a disclaimer that you need to accept, but not to worry about. It's some simple approach. So once you are going to okay it, then there will be some other pages. So options is, can you see, because it's too small, sorry about that, but it is, otherwise I cannot show the original page on the computer to be, but you can open new or open one or import file. That is the advantage, because the farmers or anyone is using can keep their data of their own, and they want to play with just a game, play with how you can reduce your emissions using different options, either management, mitigation, or land uses. That can be done. This is the advantage. So you don't need to use all the time your data. No, you can update your data. And even, so that is an important aspect that normally we may not get from the others. So then you can name your farm and ultimately select your area first. We are going for the county basis for our land, so that you can select your county. Map will appear with the land cover on the background. So anyone will be able to go to your farm or land parcel or any area and select that one. And by selecting the specific land parcel or farm area, you will have automation of the data. One is the location details. You will get the soil types, and the other, all the proper relevant properties that will be required to, in fact, as a driving variables for the old model. You will get the hardiness zone, because in some of the cases, these are important, particularly extreme weather event, but in our case, maybe not up to, but it's still useful. And then climate data. This climate data will drive from the NASA. So we don't need to use even own data for that. It will be automated. And also that current data, you can go for a year, back data, or even you can project. So that will be the advantage of this one. As a test case, we are going to show that is a grassland system, and that will be the one is the grassland. So always grazed means we have some animal livestock there. So we are going to give example as a dairy cattle. And of 30 hectares of land, we are going to consider. And later on, I'll show with and without agroforestry. So there are some data that is inputs we are using, the number of animals, then the start weight and weight, some of the inputs. And ultimately will be, because I don't want to take too much time, we're getting late. So, and these are the only few data are required, not all this, but some of these, they will be default one. I'm not sure whether you will be able to see this, how it will work. So we have the currently available components of site characteristics that already you will be getting from the default or from the map, or if you have your own file of these soil properties and others, still you can import them. So that will be part of this. And another is land use and the management. So land use and management, we have different types. One is the crops, grasses, and then within that one, and within the crops and grasses, there are whatever the key species or land use types we have, all are included there. You don't need to enter just to choose which crop you have, either crop or grassland, what are the types, or so you'll be able to choose. Then livestock, you will be able to pick up what are your animals, what type of animals there. And we are still working on the infrastructure type. We need a huge amount of time to do that. Currently, we are not progressing with that because we need to improve the other part, but at least some part of the energy footprinting will be able to include in this. So as a farm, let's say we are taking only the grass. So once you have grass, that is advantage of this model is that you can start from the back. If you have a long-term farming system, still you can calculate. So you go to the back and the observation year, the current. So whenever we started, you can just include that. And if you have the baseline, base information and inputs, you can include that input. So it's some general information, then fertilizer, manure, then when you are going to harvest, if it is the crops. So all the cases may not be harvest, means another grass will be cut. So there are some other aspects, and then the grazing part will be the grazing, and the soil residue and economics. We are trying to start with the economic part. So a slide can be shown, but we are far behind because it takes a huge amount of time for a small module development. So once we have the inputs, then grassland part, even we want to run this model using only grassland, still you can get your results for the grassland part. Then we want to go, okay, it is grassland, so we have the livestock, include the livestock. Then there are some inputs that we need to go, that is different types of, if it is dairy, heifers, dairy lactating, dairy calves. So if you can provide, we need some of the information for this, general, diet, housing, and manure. So that will ultimately included this one. And then we can proceed with this. So this data are required for this declating, then the calves. So then the production, if we have, otherwise we will be able to add this production on the national average or your farm average. It is possible to include that. Then results from this pasture. The first thing is the soil organic carbon stock changes. So as you can see, we can start from the 2001 started, and the observation is 2014. Long-term can possible, even for the observation year, whenever you need to. This will show the changes from the previous year, so you can get the annual one. And that will be able to provide this information. And some modification of the modeling, because this initial, as I mentioned, you cannot get the 100% right, because we need to improve this, the codings and the algorithms within to get the results and get the data and validate this one. So this will be the, and another important that we can provide you the long-term, even if you have data for 10 years back, the baseline data, still will be able to include the baseline and provide you the next. What will happen based on your management or land use type. And if you are adding anything, so that we can get that carbon footprint from the soil, either losing or gaining. And it is a grassland, so automatically we are gaining some, so the trend is fine. So then we need to refine this model to get to the right. And it will be based on the experimental plots or data that we need to do it. And as you can see, there is the feed estimate, even we can estimate the feed from the different types. Then we'll have the manure management aspects, what is going on due to the management. we can provide you the information. Then the emission pie chart, that is the sectoral emissions. How much is coming from manure, methane, then direct nitrous oxide, indirect nitrous oxide. There is some contribution from farm energy and the enteric methane emissions. So here is really we are getting too much, is 78, but it should be around 60 to 70%, but not too bad anyway. We can improve the things. So that is the advantage of our latest findings. And then this is also the carbon equivalent, carbon dioxide equivalent for carbon from different sectors. And so, and it is the monthly distribution of the emissions, and ultimately it is possible to provide you the detailed emission report for the farm. Because it is also important, if we have several farms, we'll be able to report this is the overall farm, the carbon footprinting of the farms. So that is very advantageous anyway. Now, we want to do, because our target with the theory of change concept we use, what will be the next actually? We thought it is better to have the agroforestry first, because this is highly important. Only mitigations and other aspects we can reduce. But our thought, yeah, agroforestry within the system, it could be further helpful to the farmers to keep their farm ongoing, because we can offset some emissions from their farm. So that is our main target. So we thought it is better to develop our agroforestry module. And within the agroforestry, it is the trees, in fact, is not really the whole agroforestry. The whole agroforestry, we have the 5 components. One is the silver arable, one is the silver purser, one is the hedgerows, one is the orchard, and the farm garden. We don't want to throw anything within the farm. So, and that is our important aspect. We need to consider whatever the carbon we have within the farm to support. And that's why, and it will be the different types of trees, but why agroforestry? When you are going to consider the silvopastoral systems, then this, as already shown, the grassland and livestock, whatever will bring it forward. So the data inputs will be put and only trees will be taken ultimately, silvopastoral system, you will get the results and how we'll get. So again, the data, as I mentioned, that it will be site characteristic. Gray here is, if we consider the agroforestry, means here you can consider the silvopastoral system. Consider the silvopastoral system, and that is all. And inputs for the grassland, then agroforestry number 1, agroforestry number 2. Here, in fact, is the species within this one is silvopastoral system based on we are taking the oak as an example. Rosita Engel from Netherlands. Okay, and the second is the hedgerows. We are considering the species sycamore as an example test case. So that how it will work. Then the other inputs, it will be as usual for the grassland and livestock. So the similar way we can put these inputs. Only here we will provide the inputs for the trees. So the observation, when we are going to observe any year, if you are interested, even for the plant cutting or logging, that is also possible. We will be able to select whatever the years you need. So that is the advantage. And tree species, as I mentioned, oak, so planting year, when? So you need to include this planting. It is 2013 example. So then average tree height, some of the information that we use the DAFAM, this is from the forestry sectors, this inventory. So we got some data from the DAFAM and we are using those data to develop the algorithms and to calculations. So validation will be later. So then you see the plantation land area, how much planting. There's a land area or percent. So that is the confusion, but land area will be important in the end from our perspectives, because how much land we want to spare. When we are going for the forestry, Ultimately, we are asking, this mass of trees per hectare, but that is not true. If we go for the silver arable system, in fact, we are planting in a certain area and sparing for this forest only the land area needed, and the others are grassland. So we cannot consider this grassland area within the forest. So that is within the trees that we are going. So our concept will be something like that, to separate this land area from there. So ultimately we are thinking that way. So in the end, when you are going to calculate, okay, how much land we are sparing, we have a 30 hectare of land. Ultimately, few hectare. Because you are sparing not that much of land for the trees. So that is the overall concept, so that farmers can convince, we can convince them that you are not sparing too much land for this. That is our idea. That's why we want to include this. What are the area really, in fact, for the trees you are using? So our concept will be something like that. And for the other data general management, then the livestock and or the same approach we will be using. So what will be the results for this silver parcel system now? So is all together. Now 3, grass, livestock, and this forestry. So these are the total, from the trees, we are getting total biomass as well as the above and below ground biomass. We are also calculating the below ground. So the trend is not too bad, it's still, but one will be validating. I think we'll be able to cope with this and match with the overall tree growth based on the species. What will be the tree growth, and ultimately, so if we get this plant height and the breadth or something like that, that will be able to provide it. And the overall trend is still good from our understanding. So as you can see that a silver parcel means we are using the oak, and the hedgerows is the sycamore. So accordingly, we need to use some of the term, may need to change, but at this moment it is fine. And we can provide the all this total and the above and below ground. And ultimately, we may need to think about the ground part as well because of the later fall. And this one is the soil organic carbon. So from these 2 sectors, we are getting the land area only. Land area used. We are not going to consider the other lands within this farm. Only the land area we're using for these trees. And this land area, the soil organic carbon can be used. So still the trend is good, fine, but we need to refine. It's very much preliminary, as I mentioned, because we need to do huge amount of algorithm is not, and the coding. And this is the total carbon balance of these trees. That is the agroforestry, not whole. Because this terminology, there will be some difference. So we need to get a feedback to how we can set up this one so that, and this is the from the trees and the land we are using, and based on the total carbon balance will be this mass of, that is this, it will be the sink, because there will be mostly the source, some of the, if it is losses, particularly if we consider the forestry from some nitrous oxide emission, but sometimes we may consider the methane oxidation as well, so that ultimately this will be the sink and a huge amount. And then the net balance. This net balance is coming from these grasses, livestock, and the agroforestry that is from the trees. What is going on? Still we can see there is some source that is still emitting. So that is 10% of this is not enough to make this farm carbon neutral. So offsetting. So there is other options we will have at this moment. We are not going to deal with, like the mitigations, or change some of the land uses, improve the things. So there will be some options to do that, so that anyone can play with and come up with some solution to make it and go for the testing, whether it works or not. So that will be doing a neat huge amount of time to do that and money, not this. And then think about, yeah, there is another possibility. If you have a spare land, you can spare some more. What will happen if we go 20% of this land used for the the different, this is your hedgerows, silvopasture, the trees, farm garden, take into consideration the other plants within the farm. Trees, not plants, anyway, within the farm. So is an example of the, if we consider 20% of the trees within the farm in whatever the aspects, then the data and ultimately we'll be using the similar way and get the detailed emission as before for the 20%. And then the other grass, farm management, dairy cattle will put the inputs in similar way and go for the agroforestry 1, then agroforestry 2. So that is the type and results, almost similar train because we are using the same process, the algorithms, and so giving us it is the increase of the total plants is almost double the plants. So biomass will be almost double. Well, there will be some changes based on the other driving variables, but still the trend, it seems, and the total above below ground biomass, we are getting more because the number of plants have been increased. And the soil organic carbon as such, so there will be land area. So increased the land area by double. So we'll get this one. And then the net balance for the 20%, if we spare the land for the 20%, is now sink. Means by 20% of this one, ultimately from this silver arable system, ultimately if we use 30 hectares of land and spare 6 hectares of land for the plantations, then there will be change, but we may not be able to spare 20%. But just an example. So it seems even 10%, and if we go for some mitigation options, we'll be able to make the farm carbon neutral. But we need these trees, whatever will be grown within the farm is for the farm, not for the forestry. So that will be the policy conflict. Anyway, so it is John will take care of that. That is not my headache. So, and the same approach, as you can see, compare this. So detailed emissions that will be able to, the reporting part as well. And as I mentioned, and if we compare, so there is total the difference between these two, only because of the agroforestry concept. Means we are introducing the trees within the farm. So we'll be able to provide this information through this modeling and ultimately go for the testing. And we tried with the economy. I don't want to explain because we are at very, very preliminary stage and even we cannot see this one, but we are trying. Anyway, is the parts for the grassland, try to put some inputs. We got the help from the TIAGASC, the economy part. Jonathan is here. So we are working together to get this. Let's see. And the results is still not up to that level, but it will take some time, but we'll come up with this. Just I want to mention few advantages of the HOLOS-IE, because one, as I mentioned, that is you will be able to take into account the land parcel, go through the national or regional level. It's still possible to, you will be able to calculate that, the total footprint and reporting purpose, even sectoral basis emissions will be able to provide, but we need those data for the regional or national level classified, and it is possible to do so. We can consider the any monocrop to mixed cropping system, including agroforestry, that already shown that we can deal with. Alternative land use and management options that we will be able to, because when you are going to change, then include what are the options, management options we want to take. We need to include those mitigations options. Still, we don't have that much, including the emission factor we need to replace. There are so many works to do and need so many manpowers to do. Then go for the greenhouse gas mitigation choices and offsetting. So that is the part of the agroforestry and other concept that you can take. We'll be able to carbon credit and cost benefit with potential for consideration of circularity. Because already within the model we'll have, but need to work how we can all link with the circularity concept and ultimately redevelop the part of this and algorithm and the coding. So that can be done, use default or own data and the file for further use. So this is another big advantage that I already mentioned. Regular data updating options once available, even national level, that DAFAM has the options. The same approach can be used and directed to this one. If we have this, let's say the ID and the data, we can automate it or update this data and can be used for this one, for the specific year or for a target of year. Potential for sustainability, that is, we want to include the agrobiodiversity and the soil health indices and the metrics so that any further decision will be based on these sectors will be able to take into consideration. Then carbon footprinting potential for infrastructure, including energy sectors, because that will be the biomass energy, renewable energy, and other part within the farm. What we will be using, that we want to include that, so that we can reduce some of the carbon footprinting when we are going to use the renewables and the biomass energy. So that will be taken into consideration. Potential for integration of agri-food industries that I already talked with Connor even, that what will be, but it's not that easy because we need the manpower and things to do. So if we think all the people, we can take into consideration and integrate with our own model. So we don't need to get another one. Then the whole system, the agri-food industries can be bring forward and together. So it will provide the field levels to the industry will ultimately come out the what we call stamping on this, what is the carbon footprint of this food. That is possible. And this is our growing phase. We will be still trying, concentrate on a certain aspect, not going to deal with because we don't have that manpower and the money to do that. And need to, and 1 year is not sufficient anyway. But we'll come up with, improve the things. And as I mentioned, beyond the growing phase or some funding, other opportunities, ultimately we'll go for the environmental footprinting. Because then the biodiversity, all other concepts will be integrated so that we can get, including the water bodies, so that we can provide the environmental footprinting. And ultimately take into consideration the agrobiodiversity, soil health, nutrient losses and water pollution, circular bioeconomy, peatlands, agri-food value chain. So that will be the future ideas of us. Of course, acknowledging the funding from the Science Foundation Ireland, and we secured the only best poster award, only one anyway, for 2023. Not too bad. So, and we must acknowledge and the project, Relief, funded by Department of Agriculture through the IRANET. And of course, our Canadian collaborators, they are also helping us in different ways. And of course, TAGASC in either way, even through Relief anyway, we're getting help from them. There are some other who has agreed, including the Board PIA, then other, particularly LIBEC. They have shown interest to help us anyway, to collaborate with us, and that's why they are included here. HOLOS-IE is really hard to develop, easy to use, that I can make sure. And visit our website. Thank you very much.